Okay, I'm gonna mute myself and you are live.
Very good, thank you. Welcome. This is the August meeting of the Northborough Conservation Commission. My name is Greg Young. I'm the current chair of the commission. And this open meeting of the Northborough Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Healy's executive order of March 29th, 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. All members of the Northborough Conservation Commission are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the Northborough Conservation Commission to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Dan Clark.
Here.
Todd Helwig.
Here.
Kelly Marston.
There.
Very good. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Vincent Vignali.
Here.
And Terry.
Here,
Terry, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, you're here. Excellent. Some ground rules. For presenters and/or applicants listed on the agenda, I will invite each speaker or applicant on the agenda by name to make a presentation and speak to their application. Participants will provide their full name and hold until their name is called. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer when not speaking and to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait until the floor is yielded to them by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others do so through the chair, taking care to identify themselves. Each vote taken by the commission will be conducted by a roll call vote. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. By phone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. Please note that part of your phone number will be visible to those viewing the meeting. By Zoom, click raise hand on the bottom of your screen and wait to be recognized. The chair will ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, the chair will call each by name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. A reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be available for viewing via the Northborough Remote Meetings tab on the town's website. Okay, and I believe our first piece of business here, we're going to go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws. I got to read something specific about that, I think, Benny, don't I?
Yes, it's on the agenda.
Yes, we're going to need to have a motion and a second that the commission enter into executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21, Subsection 3, litigation regarding pending land use litigation. The Gutierrez Company versus Northborough Planning Board, Land Court Number 21, MISC 000380. Due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding this matter in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on litigating position of the town. We need a motion for that.
I will make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Dan Clark.
Yes.
Todd Helwig.
Yes.
Kelly Marston.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So now I guess we get out of this meeting and we go into the other link.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. I'll see
So
you
we-
all soon, hopefully.
Oh, wait a minute. I wasn't focusing. I got to do something else now. Where's this?
There's always
the-
one, Todd. There's always
Yeah.
one.
There was an
Well,
email that I
also
sent.
learned that if I ask a question, somebody else has the same question. Is it the link you sent like 5 minutes ago? Is that the new one or the old one?
No, it's an email that I sent you with about the confidential meeting information. It had one link to go to the main meeting and then another link to go to a meeting that Laurie is holding.
Do not share.
Yes, do not share. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. think we're in the right place, Kelly, but I'm not sure.
I think we are too. I just saw Todd briefly.
Yeah. All right.
You are, and you're still live, and I'm just
Oh.
waiting for the rest of the gang.
We were just speedy.
Yeah. That doesn't happen often.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm never the first person in a room.
Well, a little technical problem on my end. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Okay.
We're in the meeting.
We have everybody here. No, we're missing Dan.
Dan, yep. But we're live.
Dan raised his hand.
Yeah, I don't see that. Wait a second here. Yep, I see a hand raised.
He's an attendee.
Okay, I'll bring him in. How's that?
Perfect. Is there anybody that I need to make co-host?
Me,
Oh, okay, let me
Like-
do that.
because I can't bring him in.
Nice. Done. I'm
Say.
Power.
Okay, promote the panelist. Okay. Dan should be coming in. Okay, there he is. Hi, Dan.
Hey,
We got you.
got stuck in the waiting room.
Yeah, I was out there in the vaporware field too, so. Okay, so the regular agenda here, we have,
I'm not sure if we have to do a roll call just to say we're here, but it may not be needed, but it couldn't hurt.
okay. Roll call, Dan Clark,
Here,
Todd Helwig,
Here.
Kelly Marston. I think you're muted, Kelly. I didn't hear you.
Here?
There you go. Perfect. Very good. Okay. And Terry, you're with us, obviously, right?
Yes.
All right. The first item here is the July 8th meeting minutes. I don't believe we can deal with these because we don't have a quorum. Since Kelly wasn't here for those meetings, it's just three of us voting. We're short one. So, Vinny, we're going to have to kick that till September.
That sounds good. So we table that.
And I believe that both of the public hearings required continuances, correct? 0 Hudson and 291 Lyman.
That is correct. They'd like to continue to the September meeting.
Is it a matter of you're waiting for data from them, or they're trying to pull stuff together, or what?
They're trying to pull stuff together. They're almost there, but they're not ready for tonight.
Okay,
Both of them.
okay. All right. Then we need a motion to continue. Let's do it both, 0 Hudson and 291 Lyman Street.
so moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Second by Todd. Roll call, Dan Clark,
Yes,
Todd Helwig,
Yes.
Kelly Marston,
Yes?
and I vote yes. Very good. All right. No COCs, Vinny. 128 Davis Street. Do you want to do a quick update on that?
Yep, that one's easy. The property owner is waiting for a response from the DCR. I have a meeting scheduled with DCR to walk the site tomorrow, and we're going to talk about getting a perimeter barrier in place and what the next step they think is appropriate, because they're proposing a project in that area next year.
Right.
So we're going to try to work everything together to make it as somewhat efficient as we can.
Do we already have a perimeter barrier up?
It's partial. It doesn't extend the full length. There's probably another 50 or 70 feet that needs to get put up,
Okay.
but
All
everything
right.
it's graded, and there's crabgrass growing there. So it's somewhat stabilized. It's just that we need to get a perimeter in there just in case it goes into the fall.
Okay. All right. Informal discussions. Forest stewardship, one of our favorite topics.
Yes, I sent an email with Mike Downey, the regional, actually, he's not the regional forester. I think he's the head of the regional foresters, and asked for feedback on potential foresters to utilize for the work that we're asking to have done. And he said he was going to have Chris Pryor, the regional forester, contact me. So I think he's on vacation, or he was on vacation last week. So I expect to hear from him soon.
All right. The only other point I had here from informal discussions was to acknowledge the work done on Bartlett Pond to remove water chestnuts by a couple of residents, Gene Cahill and Rachel Zulevi. And they're working with you, Vinny, and Oars has been involved in that too. So
Yeah, we got the guidance from Oars on what we're looking for to pull, or what they were looking for to pull. They got out there with kayaks and had a day of it. It seemed pretty productive, and they pulled the weeds, and I think they're drying or are already deposited at the DPW barn.
yeah, they were drawing on somebody's property, one of the people working there.
Right,
So
right.
all right, well, that's good. That's all I have, Vinny. Anything else you have?
No, we just have a lot of
Yeah, I do
trees
have
down. I
one.
guess it was windy. So
Sorry,
last
Todd?
week or weekend was windy.
There's one thing we gotta talk about,
Okay.
and
Go,
it's really boring.
all right. We'll determine how boring it is. Go ahead.
So remember my homework assignment about the wetland regulations under the bylaw,
I do.
Vinny?
Yes,
So can you just walk me through some of this? Cause I think I got it, but
yep.
the issue,
guess-
and all right, let me go. So I went through it, right? And I mean, there's no question that the no disturb and no structure areas extend from the edge of the bordering vegetated wetland, right? That's absolutely clear. No one's concerned about that. It's just a question of when they talk about those things from the edge of a resource area, what is included in the definition of resource area for purposes of drawing that line, right? And in one sense, it doesn't make a lot of sense. This is what Vinny is, Vincent, the wetlands guy, the consultant. His point was, doesn't make any sense, even though riverfront area might be 100 feet from the bank as a resource area. It doesn't make sense to then have the no disturb and no structure at the end of that, right? So it's like 125 and 135.
correct.
Is that the discussion?
Well, that riverfront is one of the resource areas that was, I did not raise that one because that seemed pretty clear. Where it got confusing was the 100-year floodplain, the bordering
Right.
land subject to flooding resource area. And
But they're
it's not clear.
treated sort of the same, right? Because bordering land subject to flood, it is a resource area.
It is, yes. And what Vito was saying was that it's a resource, bordering land subject to flooding is a resource area, as is riverfront area. But those two do not have buffer zones associated with it under the Wetlands Protection Act, the Mass Wetlands regs. But the bordering vegetated wetland does have a 100-foot buffer zone. So the interpretation and the application from the past was we put the 0 to 25 no disturb from the BVW, not from the bordering land subject to flooding.
And that feels like that makes sense to me.
Yes,
I-
it's not what the bylaw says, though.
Well, does the bylaws, I mean, the bylaw is unclear though, right?
Right, yes.
Hmm.
And I'm okay, as long as you folks say that's what we intended, that's what makes sense. We should interpret this to be from the bordering vegetated wetland. Then I will just apply it and no harm, no foul.
Well, let's go back real quick. Let's do an example, right? So the issue is the bordering land subject to flooding, which is just, it gets wet. It's got no other wetland characteristics. It just gets inundated, right?
Mhm.
So the question would be whether or not these additional setback areas apply to that. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes,
And then the question is, what purpose is that serving? Right, if it's just an area that gets inundated, and I'm not trying to put my finger on the scale here, if it's just an area that gets inundated but doesn't have any wetlands characteristics, why do we need a no structure, no build, no disturb at the end of that?
well, I came in after these were written, so I'm trying to interpret the idea, so.
I'm not, yeah, no, it was a theoretical question, right?
Right.
Because
Well-
I can't really think of a reason why you would do that.
If people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, it's like, why do you have a law for, you can't shoot someone, you can't kill? Do you really need one of those? No. But should people do the right thing? Yes, but they still have the law. So I'm not sure whether the intention of this was, yeah, people shouldn't be building and filling within that bordering land subject to flooding. And when you let them get really close, they end up going too far and doing some filling. So was the intention to provide a little breathing room for the commission for all resource areas?
But you couldn't, if you have land subject to flooding, which does not have a buffer zone.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's maybe, and now, because we're talking it through, right? Because it doesn't have a buffer zone. Therefore, if there's no buffer zone, then you're basically altering the resource area. That's the other side of it.
You could, right. So let's say they fill right up to the bordering land subject to flooding, and then it rains and things wash out, or you get some impact from that. So they are actually filling into the bordering vegetated wetland a year after the work is done. The 25-foot gives a bit of protection for things to go wrong.
So I was going to jump in.
Go ahead.
Please.
Looks like Tom's thinking about something. So I tried to do a little homework too and reread the wetland bylaw. And other than the section that it's in, which adds confusion, my interpretation of the bylaw is the language is very clear. In 4.2.3, it says clearly, no permanent structures within 35 feet of any resource area, period. And it says further, no disturbance within 25 feet of resource areas. I mean, to me, that's crystal clear. And resource areas are defined, it's essentially everything, all the wetlands, wetland resources. So for some reason, it was stuck in the buffer zone subheading. But it doesn't reference buffers or not buffers. It says very clearly any resource area. So my interpretation of that is that within 35 and 25 feet of any resource area, we apply these restrictions.
And it does say resource area. Where
Yes,
it gets a little dicey for me is riverfront area is a resource area. And that tends to extend pretty, well, extensively beyond the area where we're really concerned.
Let me go back to Dan's point, because I don't disagree with what Dan said, right? Because in the applicability section, right? These are the resource areas. It lists them. And bordering or isolated vegetated wetland is a resource area. So I don't have a problem saying that the language of the regulations says that you apply the setbacks to those areas. I guess the question is whether that makes sense. And you gave us a reason why it would, right? Because you could then be filling the area that is a resource area.
Right. For a bordering land subject to flooding. I
For a
would have a
bordering-
little bit more difficulty with that riverfront area, because that's there, you get a lot of development within the riverfront area that extends way inside of the riverfront area, and it's allowed to be there. There's specifics in the Wetlands Protection Act to allow construction or activity within the riverfront area.
So I am perfectly accepting of the fact that somebody pointed out perhaps an inconsistency in our regulations, maybe even in our application of the regulation. We thought about it, and then going forward, we're going to do something. This is how we're going to do it. And I, just throwing this out there, you could apply the setbacks to the bordering land subject to flooding for the reasons you just said, and then not the riverfront area. Because it makes sense, you know, it supports, you know, the purposes of the regulation by doing it in the bordering isolated land subject to flooding. It supports the purposes of the act by applying the setbacks there, but it doesn't for the riverfront. It doesn't make any sense. So I'd be okay with an interpretation that we go forward that it doesn't apply to riverfront area, but it does apply to the other area.
But one of the questions I had around on the homework side, which I also looked at, is, you know, BBW we can pretty well delineate, right? We can pretty well identify where the wetland boundary is. It's not so much with BLSF. It's a little more amorphous in my view.
Well, actually, now we've got good maps from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They have mapped all the significant flood zones in town, and it provides elevations for areas that are near a floodway.
Mm-hmm.
Where it gets a bit dicey is when you're up in the headwaters. Anything less than a square mile of drainage area isn't mapped by FEMA. So backyards that flood, regular small areas at the top of the headwaters where the streams start don't get mapped. So it is a pretty heavy lift for a designer to establish that bordering land subject to flooding in those areas. So I kind of agree, but it's good in the areas where you're really worried about, where like down near the Assabet River,
Right.
it's pretty well defined, but not up at the pond at the senior center.
So is the consensus here that BLSF is a resource area?
Yeah.
And from Dan's point, which is, if it's a resource area, that it has a 35-25 restriction attached to it.
Yeah. But again, I wouldn't do that for riverfront area. Because it doesn't make any sense. You'd have 100 feet of nothing, and then you'd have suddenly a 35 feet of more restricted zone.
Yeah.
At the end of it, that was more restricted than what came before.
Right.
Okay. All right. So Vinny, y'all clear, all set now?
Yeah, I think I'll ask Laurie how we set up a policy. Maybe I'll have that ready for the next meeting. Unless you guys know how to just do a policy so people who are applying get the idea and they know what to expect.
Refer to the August 12, 2024 YouTube video.
All right.
I don't know that it needs to be that fancy, other than this is how we understand our own regulation.
And
Okay.
are
I mean, if you
you talking about, does that
wanted to put
require a
something-
town meeting vote?
No,
No, I don't want to go there. We could change the bylaw, but I don't want to
no,
do that.
it's just how we're, you know, it's just like the zoning bylaw, right?
It's
Parts
a-
of it are vague, and so the building commissioner has to interpret portions of it. That's
how
all
we
we're doing.
interpret.
Right. I mean, if you wanted to, I don't know that we need to do anything, but if you wanted to do something, you could type something up and have Greg sign it and then put it on the website, and anybody who wants to see it, you refer to that.
Okay,
Somebody maybe run it by Laurie, see what she thinks, and we could take that approach.
yeah, well, I'll plan that we've got it addressed just by our discussions here. And if we need clarification or anything more, I'll check with Laurie to see if we need any other clarifications.
And maybe we want to, maybe Justin. I don't know.
Yep.
The other members before we do, I mean, it's only the four of us.
Right. Then we can talk about it next meeting and see what they think too on that. Kelly, I'm not
But
trying
you
to cut you out of this. Do you know what we're talking about? You do. You're muted.
Yep, I know what you guys are talking about.
Okay.
And I agree. I totally agree.
But maybe you could put that note, the letter together as like a statement of what the policy is, and then we could talk about it at the next meeting when we've got more members.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Thanks for reminding us, Todd. That's good.
Well, it's gonna come up when he comes. That's the other thing that's gonna be an issue is when Zero Hudson comes up, they're gonna say, well, this was the policy. Are you, that's gonna be an issue for them, right?
Yes,
Are we
it
just
will.
doing it now, or should it apply to them? Should it not apply to them? Have we done it in the past? There's nothing we can do about that, but it's gonna come up.
Yes. Okay.
Well, and Todd, if we're clarifying a vague piece of the policy, that's how we do it. We've clarified.
I'm okay standing by it. I'm not concerned.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope. Next meeting is September 9th, I think it is.
Yep. Anything coming in for that you know of?
A couple of tree questions. We had a lot of wind, so some people have pine trees that they're a little worried about. So they're in or next to wetlands. So anything within 25 feet, they'll be doing requests for determinations.
Okay.
And the last tree incident, we should probably take a look at. A couple of trees were cut down at 2 to 3 or 3 feet high or so, and I was under the impression we were going to have 12 to 15 feet, and they dropped them onto the neighbor's property and into the wetland.
You're not
So-
talking Coolidge Circle, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have to do a little more digging and research and come back with the facts and see how you guys want to deal with it.
All right. I think that's all I have, certainly. Anybody else have anything? Dan, anything in your mind?
Good.
Todd?
Good.
Kelly? Okay. All right. Well, then I guess and we're going to wait to hear about ongoing discussions from our first session, Vinny, once you and Laurie discuss and see where we go with that.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Kelly, welcome back. As you can see, it's kind of like you never left, right?
Pretty much. Yep.
Good stuff. Okay, and we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Dan-
All right, roll
Second.
call. Dan Clark,
Yes.
Todd Helwig,
Yes.
Kelly Marston,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Very good, folks. Thank you.